Welcome and thank you for all the attendees and to our panelists for our third episode of Let's Talk Recruiting. Today's topic is going to be on how to win big for your company with recruiting. And we have four panelists once again from across the country. What I'm going to do is do a quick introduction of who our panelists are, and then what we're going to do is kind of a round robin. I'll go through ways that they've impacted their company in winning ways with recruiting. And then we're going to, as we go, just have it be an open conversation around recruiting. All right, so for our panelists, is it Alex or Alexandra?
So I go by Alex, but
Alex.
Alexandra professionally. So
Gotcha.
way less mouthful if it's Alex.
All right, we're all friendly here, so I'm just going to call you Alex. So Alex Moore out of Dallas, Jana Frazier from Los Angeles, and Steve Cosme out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Do you guys call it the Research Triangle still?
We're starting to kind of differentiate ourselves a little bit. Raleigh is Raleigh now. Durham's still Durham. Anyone outside will still kind of call it RTP, but we'll say Raleigh, downtown Raleigh.
Gotcha. Okay. I still refer to it as the Triangle, so I may have to change how I refer to you guys out there. And then Mike Crosby with Ticketmaster out here in LA with myself and Jana. All right, so again, the topic is how to win big for your company with recruiting. And what I'm going to do is start off to Jana, kind of throw it your way and let you start off with your topic.
Thank you, Sean. Well, my first suggestion of how to win big for your company with a strategic approach is to take a look at the bigger picture.
Hey, Jana.
Yes.
Jana, can you lean a little towards the microphone? It's a little hard to hear you. I don't know if that's true for everybody else. It's a little bit hard.
Sorry. How's this?
Better. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll try to project a little bit more too. Okay. So my first suggestion of how to win big for your company with a strategic approach is to look at the larger picture of your company and your industry. Okay. We all know as recruiters and recruiting leaders to look at the job itself. Everyone knows that. To look at the job, get to know the job that we're recruiting for, as well as the department. But when you take a larger look at the company itself, the challenges that the company is facing, the goals of the company, what their near and long-term plans are, as well as the industry, the challenges of the industry and the trends of the industry, then you can be just one step ahead, right? So, and that's where you will be. Even if you see this long-term, goal in recruiting, you want to be one step ahead. So you're finding people that fit the current need, as well as people who will be able to adapt to that next step. I find that extremely important, and it's been really helpful for me in my career. And to give an example of that, in my industry, which is multifamily housing, we have a sales position, a very common position every company has a lot of constant recruiting for. And I've seen the evolution of that position, during my time in this industry, and have been a recruiter and recruiting leader throughout that transition of really that changing role of becoming more metric driven, more goal oriented. And it was very valuable for me to see that coming and always, try to find, those candidates that will fit that and will fit the next phase of that transition. And now with unfortunately, a lot of us make some really quick changes. And we've had to very quickly change the way that we're interacting with our customers.
Hey, Jenna, quick question. Does anybody on your team, when it talks about getting into business or learning the business, do any of your recruiters kind of like sit in business meetings or attend? I'll stretch a little bit. I've never heard of anybody be able to do this, but attending industry events outside of there everybody's there to recruit, right? But the real knowledge grab for some type of external event would be about the business? Or is it just strictly about, hey, we need help filling our recs, let's talk about that? Or are they getting into that business conversation?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because that's a way to how to do it is within your company being part of those conversations. So our myself and my recruiting manager, my recruiting engagement specialist are involved in a lot of conversations about the business. So our company's leadership conference, for example, where we're talking about the goals of the company for the upcoming year. Those, they're involved in that conference as well. And so they're hearing the information. And it's also my role as the recruiting leader to share that information when I get it. And I do go to industry conferences and I network a lot within the industry. And it is my responsibility to share that information. Also to, for everybody in every type of recruiting role to just really interact with every department. A lot of times training has that information because they're preparing their training materials for that next step. So it's great for recruiting to connect with training and see what they're working on, as well as every department, just see what everybody's working on to kind of see that next step. And it's really easy to get industry information and just sign up for industry newsletters. So we get those newsletters coming to our email box every week or so, and just kind of read the trends.
Have you ever seen somebody come from non-recruiting to lead recruiting, where they truly come from the industry or the business from within their company to lead recruiting? I've only seen it twice, and it didn't last for very long. They basically got out of there within a year. Have you ever seen somebody with a non-recruiting background, pure business, lead the recruiting team? And this sort of goes for everybody on the panel. But yeah, Jana, have you seen that?
I haven't seen it work really well in a lead recruiting role. I've seen it work really well when somebody's come into a recruiter role where they first learn that before they lead it. But when it's gone to leadership, directly to leadership, I haven't seen it work out long term and work out really well.
So I'll say, Sean, in my organization, I actually report to a partner at my consulting firm who grew up within management consulting. So he was a more classical management consultant doing strategy work and mergers and acquisitions and process optimization work for companies. And so what I will say in my unique example, he absolutely trusts me and my team to execute on the daily recruiting expertise that we all not only possess, but need to serve the firm with. But as a leader, and I hope that all of you lean on leaders at your companies as well, as a leader who thinks critically about the business as one of his core functions of his job, he does a fantastic job leading talent acquisition because he brings a curiosity to his approach to leading me. Therefore, I get to lead my organization based on some of his guidance and recommendations. He has a different perspective, and you, in my opinion, should take advantage of people that don't live in the trenches of talent acquisition to help you think critically about the way that you're better serving the business. And so I think it's got to be the right leader. It's got to be the leader that's not telling you what to do, but they're asking you the right questions to inspire you to think differently about your job. So that's been my personal example of a leader that's kind of above talent acquisition, but over the talent department that's done a really great job in this instance.
Gotcha.
That seems like the right way to do it. Curious, ask questions, guide, but maybe not, get into the weeds of it.
Yep, exactly.
So, Jen, is that good? Are you good on your topic?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks. So, Steve, I'm going to jump over to you with your item.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean. And again, all the panelists for jumping on for today's conversation. I hope everyone's family are doing well during this crazy time. But, currently I work for Pendo. We're a late stage tech startup in Raleigh. It's hard to say startup anymore because we have over 430 employees worldwide. But I jumped on board when we were only 200. And believe it or not, that was only about 19 months ago. So we've been scaling incredibly quickly. And I thought today I would just share with you some of my experience in terms of just helping recruiting scale along with the rest of the business. So I think first and foremost, what was most effective when I came into seat here at Pendo was the fact that the processes, the interviewing processes themselves was a little bit too gray area-ish. There wasn't black and white kind of detail of what we were truly looking to assess. And when we were looking to see how can we create a system that's scalable, we created something that's simple. It's a scorecard. Across all of the roles at Pendo now, we have a scorecard where the top portion of it is actually all uniform across all the different departments, sales to engineering, to business development, whatnot. And those are going to be the glue that has allowed us to really create the culture that we have right now. So you can take a look at our core values, and in that upper portion, we're going to want to make sure that we have all of those kind of data points to make sure that they're a great fit and cultural add to our team. Now, beyond that, for the specific role, it's my duty as a senior recruiter for our technical team here at Pendo to work with my hiring managers to really figure out for that role, what are those critical must-have skills? Without these skills, this individual is ineffective. And let's start to figure out how I, as a recruiter, can start to vet for that. And then also, let's create some talking tracks and questions around those critical skills that we can hand off to your interviewing team to make sure that we have a clear benchmark for us to assess talent. So that's been really critical. So essentially creating an enterprise-wide scorecard system and then really partnering with your hiring managers to understand what those critical skill sets are. That is a living document. We revisit that, I want to say 3 or 4 times a year, just to make sure that we are honing in on the right skills. Because me as a recruiter, I'm not a software engineer. I like to say I play one on TV, but I really need to close the technical gap for my hiring managers because their time is a very finite resource. So if I cannot close that technical gap and really help them or avoid them from going on a dud call, that's where I'm really proving my value. So that's been really important for us. Number 2 has been just standardizing the overall interview process. We do have Greenhouse as our applicant tracking system and our just talent database, for lack of a better word. And using that is a great tool because now we can start to report on our overall interviewing process, figuring out where there might be some breakpoints. Where is the process taking too long and where are we losing candidates? The best thing about it is us being able to take different orgs and actually compare apples to apples their recruiting processes. Now, it took a little bit of time for us to get there because you need to create standard names for these recruiting stages so that when you're pulling data from your database, that you can really truly have meaningful data. So that's been very important for us.
Steve,
yep.
That data that you're getting or that reporting, is that just for your recruiting team or are you sharing that and speaking to it with the hiring team, with the hiring managers?
That's a great question. So I will review this every quarter with the hiring teams because Greenhouse is great with this in the reporting. They can actually articulate pass-through rates. So we can go top of funnel with inbound applicants and the people that we're bringing in from passive recruiting pools and talent pools. And you can see that all the way through to offer. And it gives you great highlight details in terms of over total talent and then the pass-through rates. And yes, believe it or not, there was a hiring team that, during our weekly syncs, they asked me, they're like, hey, I want to feel like I'm not the one person that's always a yes, and I'm always giving everyone yeses because I feel like everyone that I'm talking to, I'm just being way too open-minded. With that being said, I pulled up the data and she was right within line with the rest of the hiring managers that were speaking to that caliber talent. So it's a great tool and it's a great, area to kind of look into to figure out where do I need to iterate on my process right now currently. I think along with that, being able to pull that data, you can find, trends if things are taking too long, like I mentioned, or if you see like there is, maybe a hiring manager that is having a little bit too high of a pass-through rate, maybe we need to, revisit what they're assessing to make sure that that's in line with what the role really needs and requires. I think beyond that, one thing that really has helped us as well, in terms of us differentiating ourselves and helping scale is by creating specific branding for departments. So we have an overall company brand, but when you're working in the day in the life of a specific, organization such as our sales org, our product org, design, or engineering, that has a little bit different of a flavor. So creating content to be able to share with passive candidates, to be able to share with candidates currently in pipeline, to differentiate yourself, showcase the value and impact that they're going to have with their role, and also just give them a better glimpse into the types of personalities that you actually have on your team, because we're not all just coding 24/7. That's going to be incredibly valuable for you to set yourself apart from the competitors and really to just stay top of mind for your talent.
Does anybody want to add anything? I have a quick, not a rebuttal, but a challenge to you on that one a little bit, Steve. Does anybody want to, Alex, Mike, Jana? Okay, let me come at you. So I love your concept around reporting and scorecarding and getting all that data. I'm not a big fan of the quarterly reporting, although there is quarterly reporting, but I'm a huge fanatic when it comes to weekly scorecard reporting type deal. I think when I say scorecard, I think it's pretty much the same stuff that you were talking about, but it's really focused on open rec reporting. So places I've gone, we do that type of reporting where it's really metric driven. It's not a dashboard where there's pie charts and bar charts, but it's really by the numbers. So you're seeing numbers and where everything is in the funnel, but it focuses on, it's essentially, it goes out each Monday morning, looks back to the previous week. So it's like, what's going on now? It's mainly for the staffing leader and their recruiting team, but every now and then you get a manager that wants to, hey, what's going on in my department? So you send them a little chop of that report, and then next thing you know, they get it for the next 3 weeks, and then they're leaned back because recruiting does know what they're doing. Here are the numbers to show to it. So my challenge back to you on that one is, if you ever, food for thought, weekly scorecarding, because my main mindset is it's a short story. And when you get into a quarterly report, it's kind of a long story, and you can, no offense to anyone, but you can kind of bullshit your way through a long story pretty easy, but you can't do it through through short stories. So just a challenge out there to look at weekly scorecarding. It works wonders. I've done it every place that I've gone. Go ahead.
Yeah, we send that out weekly to our CTO. So I do have a very high level bird's eye view that goes out Friday before end of business for us. And that's going to give us, it breaks down every rec that I'm working on. And then it has essentially every stage, how many people are in that stage, if there's any hot action items, and then also who's going to be finaling. So if we need to start talking about offers and whatnot, that's very important. I should have highlighted that. I was thinking more just high level strategic in terms of how to really, up level your own recruiting processes, but that's imperative. That's something that our new senior director of TA had us start to output when he started over a year ago, and we have nothing but glowing reviews from that.
Gotcha. All right. You could have just told me, yeah, we do it weekly, and I could have stopped my rant. But you're there. All right. Fantastic. So Mike, I'm going to sort of jump it over to you.
Sure thing. Thanks, Sean. And yeah, Steve, that was great. I mean, two different types of scorecards here. One, the weekly reporting, and at Ticketmaster, where I'm part of the talent acquisition team. Some of the top leaders get it monthly. A lot of the, kind of not, C-suite do get it weekly indeed. But what you'd also touched upon, Steve, is standardizing the interview process. And that often, I may have misunderstood you, Steve, but it sounded like you were talking about a candidate scorecard as well that was a standardized process throughout. And, even though we've been around 44 years at Ticketmaster, we're still kind of looking at the idea of, hey, how about some sort of standardized software development test that we can either buy / internally, develop and tweak through HackerRank was one that, we're looking at. That'll make it a little bit easier to for consistency across the process, because we have quad digits of software developers, and sometimes one might be good for one team and not the other. But the main thing that I wanted to speak upon today is training the hiring managers and the interviewers. And we have we call our program Hiring Right. And it exists in a few different manifestations, one being kind of a longer hour and a half that not a lot of people find the time to do. Hour and a half in person, hour and a half Zoom of like a 40 to 60 slide deep dive into the essentials of recruiting. You're new here, everything about interview best practice, resume review, and so on, which we call it the essentials. But we're also doing, kind of half hour, more easy, like this webinar, bite-sized snippets, and we're moving into recorded sessions too. So it's like, hey, watch this 6 or 7 minute video and really just get the greatest hits. If you want to learn more, here's where you can go. But a different chapter besides the essentials that focuses on interview best practice. We don't have scorecards, but some of the hiring managers do that. And I'm pretty impressed, and I give those as examples to others. Hey, look what you can do here. Is leveraging hiring manager and interviewers' networks to drive referrals. That's actually the title of the module, leveraging your network to drive referrals. So what we have and what I've seen at previous organizations is a referral bonus program, but you don't even need one of those. I've been at companies where there's no referral bonuses, but AT&T, a previous employee, you still have kind of a ton of folks entering the company via referral, even though there's no employee bonus. And you guys all know this. I'm preaching to the choir. Hiring managers may not know this, that referrals are time and time again proven to be the best hires, because an interview process, even if it's extensive and great, you're getting to know a person in a few hours versus getting to know a person in a few years working with them. And it also kind of touches on Jana's point about, hiring not just for the specific job, but for the company, for the cultural fit, for the next job that they'll have once they get that promotion in a little bit of time, if they are indeed the superstar. So there's a lot of tools that we kind of go through that hiring managers don't necessarily think of in their busy day in terms of free LinkedIn. They think, oh, you need to spend all this money and have a LinkedIn recruiter seat to recruit people online. Well, some of you, bootstrap folks who don't have companies that can spend a lot of money on the tools, by no means do you need that. Free LinkedIn, you can do great searches. You can filter by first, second degree contacts. You can filter by your alumni network. You can filter by groups. The Boolean strings are not difficult at all in there. So we do trainings on that. And some hiring managers, they're like, I'm not going to find the time for that. You have to find the candidates for me. Other ones love it. They jump right in. They find people in their network. And it basically helps us because we're teaching them to fish by increasing their own pipelines. And then if you get them to reach out to those people, well, certainly we know that can increase response rate as well when a hiring manager reaches out versus recruiter. We don't just do LinkedIn. We look at, Facebook and Twitter and, some of the other social media that someone might use. And basically it's like wherever the hiring manager is most active and has the biggest network is probably going to be the most successful. But LinkedIn's kind of designed for that. So we focus on that, more than the other social media on the program. And then we have a little snippet at the end of, handful of slides for in-person networking, kind of best practice when you're going to a scale or a reInvent, or a meetup that we host at Ticketmaster regularly, or a KubeCon, which, by the way, on your previous point, Sean, I go to some of those things way over my head. I'm like, Steve, I'm not a developer. It's like, I would have to put in a heck of a lot of time and, not sleep or something to be able to do my recruiting job, but also learn enough about the technical business to actually be effectiveness there. So,
Mike, can I throw a thing at you on your
leveraging your network is the main training that I hold to our team. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I sort of going back like 15 seconds around the LinkedIn network of people? I want to throw a little scenario at you to see if you did any of this or have heard of it. A few years back at a hedge fund company, it's financial industry, right? So a lot of people are connected. So I was working with one of their sourcers where, okay, she connected to a lot of people at the company. And unless, on LinkedIn, unless you hide your connections, you can see who that person is connected to, right? You can see into their network, your second degree. And we kind of tallied that list, right? I wouldn't say the word scrape, but we grabbed the networks of key people at that company that was sharing their LinkedIn profile. So we weren't doing any privacy issues. And then from there, she would go to those employees and start to say, hey, I need an introduction to Sally, Rick, and Mary down here, and really kind of mine people's network and then target within that. Now, it turned out to be I thought it was a long-term effort, turned into be a short-term project because it's still a lot of work. They thought it was going to be a lot quicker and a lot smoother, but it's recruiting, it's sourcing, it's work. And there's thousands of people you can go through. It can keep you busy. So it kind of like, it kind of got augmented to say, well, let's have that employee kind of do it for us rather than mining the network. I thought it was a big miss around getting introduction to key talent through that network, especially in that tight industry where everybody knows everybody. Have you ever seen it where people went a little in-depth in targeting within their employees' network at a company?
I mean, if I understand your question, I want to be mindful of time here with Alex going, but it sounds like it sounds like I'm not understanding the question in terms of, in a program versus like some of our, as I said before, some of our hiring managers go deep and they do scour their network. Sometimes they look through the project, pick out, I don't know these people, but X, Y, and Z look good. And sometimes they just, you got to do all of that. It's kind of case by case with the different.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I pulled you way off topic.
Some of them have been involved and it's been useful.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I kind of digressed. I tend to do that. It's totally off topic, but it's just a different way of looking at referrals.
Great.
All right. So Mike, to your point, Alex, I'm going to sort of jump over to you and have you discuss your topic.
Sure. So I felt like my topic was probably pretty timely during this current season that we're in with COVID-19 impacting a lot of business. And for many of you, you're not able to hire as many people as you'd originally planned to hire this quarter, and your growth plans just really were derailed. And so I've learned that just generally speaking, one of the best ways that I can help my company win at recruiting is being the resident expert specifically around interview process methodology. So I've come into companies and very much been a sponge and learned what was built before me. I've also built my own process from scratch, but more likely you're going to come into a company that has some established processes. But what I've learned the majority of the time, those processes are informed by someone in recruiting, but hiring managers do tend to get a lot of say in how an interview process flows. Obviously, they're the ones helping you craft the requirements, the questions you're going to be asking, the flow of the interviews. But we all have to keep in mind that we are the experts on the recruiting and interview process, not the hiring manager. And so what I've learned and what I wanted to share today was just the concept of when you are at a company and you are flowing through the interview process as the company has designed it before, I recommend that you think critically about how it's going. And I think what we've talked about related to reports, I think related to just being the expert on the marketplace and the talent, if you will, really brings this clout to your ability to then bring back to the hiring managers, hey, why don't we consider doing things this way? There are tons of HR resources out there, open sourced, to help you understand what big companies are doing, what innovative companies are doing with their interview processes, and bring that expertise to the table and really be that business partner to your hiring managers. And I've come to find that not only, similar to what Mike was saying, just to bring that value as a trusted advisor to your hiring manager and not just being an order taker. I know the last thing anyone in talent acquisition wants to be known as is an order taker. That's a really great way for you to establish credibility with that clout that you can bring to the table through helping your company with their interview process improvement. And I think no company has figured out how to interview effectively to the utmost degree. There's always room for iteration and improvement. And so just being a part of that conversation with the hiring manager and not just accepting the old process as the only way it can ever flow is one of the best ways that you can serve your company. And I think right now is a really great time to audit interview processes. So if you aren't hiring as much, if you're trying to be a really great value add to the business right now, it's a really great time to be a strategic thinker about how you can be interviewing better once we're all through this season.
Alex, have you ever done any formal training sessions with hiring managers on how to hire, how to interview, where it's a classroom setting?
I have, yes. So I conduct those pretty regularly because we're scaling our interview teams right now. So I think it's extremely important, one, if you've established the process and you're truly just training, to walk everyone that's in that training through the why. So help them understand beyond the core interviews that you're training them on, they need to understand the full process and the role that they play. Everyone thinks they're a better interviewer than they are. And so it's really important for them to understand, hey, as much as you think covering these topics is just going to be really interesting, here's the entire process and its methodology so that when you're signed up for this interview, you stay in your lane and you stick to your script and focus on the structure of your interview. And it's really helped me get interviewers to buy in so that they're not, questioning if another interview is going to cover this, that, or the other. So that's one of my biggest takeaways from interview training is don't just focus on the interview itself, talk about the methodology and the why behind the whole process.
Yeah, the training, doing interview training from recruiters to managers, that's been the biggest leap when it comes to getting awareness out there, getting respect, and showing that you know what you're doing. It's been through those training sessions. So I highly recommend it. It's great that you guys are doing that there.
Yep.
Anybody else want to comment on Alex stuff? Do you do I can't remember the names of it, but do you ever talk about some kind of the scientifically structured interviewing, or do you sort of can't remember the name of it? It's killing me. But or do you just?
Well, so I informed my approach to our methodology at my firm through just the concept of structured interviewing. So I don't even know if there's this formal approach or a formal, I guess, definition or title for the concept of structured interviewing, but there's tons of research out there on why structured interviewing is the most effective way to interview. And so I absolutely lead with, this is why our process has so much structure and has so much rigor to it. It's better from an objectivity standpoint. It's better from an efficiency standpoint. And it's a better candidate experience because all candidates are being evaluated fairly and against the same criteria. And so there's really great research on Google's rework on structured interviewing. So highly recommend going to that website if you're trying to build out your own methodology. And then there's another research study on interviewing called the Schmidt-Hunter Hiring Study. It studies years and years of interviewing and identifies some of the most effective ways to actually assess talent. And so one of the key takeaways from it is, no matter what your methodology is, whether it's a coding test, a work sample, or whatever it is that you're testing for, one of the most consistent ways to ensure that your process is actually effectively assessing talent is for it to be a structured interview process.
Gotcha. All right. Well, excellent. We're at that half-hour mark. Did anybody have any last comments to add? All right, let me pull up see everybody's name again. So again, thanks for all the panelists for joining. We've recorded this and I'll post it up on LinkedIn for anyone else who wants to view it who have not attended to it. But again, thanks for everyone's time. And unless anybody has any ending words, we can just end it here. All right, thanks everybody.
Including us.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.